YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Princess, SoundCloud, SoundClick. It's your boy Tone 202 coming at you one more again. Uh, the gram. The gram. I'll be on the gram. I'll be on the gram. Let's see. Okay, so this goes out to Golden Globe. Golden Globe. Golden Globe. Uh, I did some researching last night and looked up some stuff on Zionists. And well, let me start this out this way. This is an excerpt of, I guess it would be my Romans versus Jews. You know, so it would be the Christians versus the Jews versus the Muslims. I guess that's where this is. Anyways, it's religion. So this is an open forum, and if I made a mistake, you guys can correct me. Just don't be rude about it. Don't come on and call me a bunch of names, because then I'll just go ahead and chop that comment. But nonetheless, I don't mind being corrected, is what I'm saying. Anyway, so I looked up the Talmud, and I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by how much information is on the internet about the Talmud. Now, when I look up things on the internet, like when I do my research papers, I get most of my information from the internet and our books. But I don't just go to one place and say, okay, this is the truth. I search around, listen to what different people are saying. So I was listening to some. I was watching some videos on the origin of the Jews and the 12 tribes and the kingdoms, and I learned a lot. Didn't know that the kingdom was divided into two, and I, recently found out that you know they originally came from Mesopotamia. Now I found this to be uh, amazing, because if the Jews came from Mesopotamia, then that would mean that they have an Asian origin. Mesopotamia is in Asia, and so is Jerusalem, by the way. Now there was all kind of stories about who did what, and all the way up to recent years, but I like to follow the historical past of the way they traveled from one area to another and how the Talmud came into place. Now, I don't have a full grasp on this. I just started getting into the Talmud, but it's pertinent today because we are living under the, we're still living under the Roman Empire. Listen, the Roman Empire also had two different kingdoms, one in the east and one in the west. And the one in the west with Constantine was never conquered. Okay? And basically, once you got up to, I don't know, the 20th century or the 19th century, basically the Romans, the Greeks, basically, um, the Romans and the Greeks, the Caucasians, basically they had already established their empire back when Alexander the Greek or the Great conquered pretty much everywhere he went. But nonetheless, as far as the Romans are concerned, the Italians, they pretty much came into Americas. They migrated into Americas and they took over. I mean, they're into all kind of stuff I'm not going to get into, but they're into all kind of stuff. So their empire is still very pertinent today. We know that, we're aware of some of their practices, so I'm just going to leave that at that. But they are still thriving today. And as far as the Talmud is concerned, I learned that the Talmud is basically a bunch of words handed down by a bunch of so-called priests, so-called teachers. Now, when you look at the Talmud, it's what, 30, 34, 35 books, I think. I thought it was just going to be one book like the Bible. I was going to go buy one, but it's an encyclopedia, basically. It's a like the Britannica. It's an encyclopedia of books of written word, and the origin of it is basically when Moses went and got his instructions and the written law by God. The Jews also went to Mount Sinai and they came back with their own written excuse me, their own words, but they just passed it down from one to another, but it wasn't the written word of God. The Talmud uh, also speaks about Jesus and how much they hated him. They said he was the offspring of a Roman centurion and Mary, a prostitute. They hated him very much. And it's a good chance that those Jews in that time were the ones who killed Christ, because somebody had written some comments about, because I was talking about the black Jews, and they were talking about, you mean the Jews who killed Jesus Christ, and I was like, well, yeah, because you got to understand there are different types of Jews, they have different type of mind state. Even today, if you go among the black people who are claiming to be Jews, they have different divisions among themselves. And if Christ came back today, there's a good chance that even if the black Jews understood that they were Jews, some of them would want to kill Christ because of power. And I said this, and this is why they killed Christ before. They were under the thumb of the Roman Empire, and you know, uh, they did not want the law to change, and the Talmud was heavily influenced within that. It's a little chilly out here. So basically what they wanted to do was they wanted to write down their own words and totally deface Christ. And they also say that Christ is in hell right now, burning. But I think the guys who started off with the Talmud, I think they're the ones in hell right now, burning. They also said that Christ, they also said that they went and got his body. Uh, they themselves went and got Christ's body out of the tomb 3 days later. They're the ones who did this. They did anything to make it seem like Christ did not rise in 3 days. So they were just like, oh, you're going to rise in 3 days? Fine. We're just going to go and take your body. This is what they wrote down. There's just so much in the Talmud. It's fascinating of how much effort that's given to say that Christ was not the Son of God. They called him a blasphemer. This is really the reason why they wanted him hung and out the way. They called him blasphemer. Like, no man can say that they're the Son of God. I've even talked to some Muslims today, and it was like, God can't have a son. And I'm like, wait, God can build the universe, but he can't have a son? God can have whatever in the world he wants. Whatever God wants. If he wants a brand new Mercedes Benz and turn that into a freaking deer or something, God can do that because he is omnipotent. He's all powerful. You can't tell me God can't have a son. So basically, they all this is in the Talmud. You guys feel free to start looking it up. It's a lot of information. Then you have your origin of okay, then you have the Babylonian Empire. So I was listening to a guy, he was talking about the people of the Babylonian Empire when Babylon took over Jerusalem, and the Jews, when they were in the Babylonian Empire, he said they were susceptible to, pretty much worshiping Satan. And he says that this is where the Jews got their Talmudic influence from. He's talking about the Jews who were for Christ. There's just so much information there, and even when you get to the part of how the northern and the Eastern Kingdom was separated, and how they had two cities, and one of them was Jerusalem, and I forgot what the other city in the north was. The one in the east was Jerusalem, and the one in the north was something else. But nonetheless, after Solomon, Saul, and David were no longer kings, I'm sorry, this is all fuzzy. Then the empire was taken over by the Northern Empire was taken over by a different bloodline, and these men did not worship God. Basically, they attacked the Eastern Kingdom, and all hell broke loose and pretty much took it over. So I want to say this. For one, I believe that I am a Jew. I'm not Jewish. Those are Russians. Those are Russians as Caucasians. I am not Arab, obviously. Um, so if my ancestors' origins are the way I understand it, I believe they were Asians. They came out of Mesopotamia. Jerusalem is in Asia, so Mesopotamia is in Asia, so that would make them Asians. And then they were in captivity in Egypt. Now Egypt is in Africa. So basically, they crossed into. So basically, once the Northern Kingdom took over the Eastern Kingdom, they fled into Africa. And when they fled into Africa, they were uh, uh, the Egyptians saw that they had a large kingdom and that there were a lot of them, so they put them in captivity. Once they were let go out of captivity with Moses, they were in pretty much the wilderness for 40 years. And I'm going to say something to that. I was reading a book of, what was that, Deuteronomy, I think? I was reading a book of Deuteronomy, and they said that God said that he had them roam around for 40 years because he wanted to get the warlike, there were a bunch of soldiers that God wanted to get rid of, so he waited till they died. So then they came into the promised land of Canaan, and then when you read in the book of Deuteronomy, it's fascinating because they were walking around the mountain, and when they were walking around the mountain, God was talking about the giants that lived there, the Anamites. He was talking about the Europeans that lived there, the Caucasoids, the Idumeans, who are white people. He was talking about how they killed all the Ammonites and took over their territory. Then God said, "Do not attack them, because if you attack them," He says, "I won't give you any other land." Now, when I start thinking about that, I was just like, "Well, this is the reason why you got rid of all the soldiers that you wanted to get rid of, Lord, because you knew that they were going to go and attack the Idumeans. God knew this. You know what I'm saying? He was like, no, don't go attack them. He's like, I'm not going to give you any other land. This video is going to end soon. He was like, well, I'm not going to give you any other land. So I was just like, wow, God is a God of time. So he knows what's going to happen. And he was calculating the whole thing. He was just like, if I don't get rid of these people, then my people are going to run up in, was a Mount, it might have been Sinai. It wasn't Mount Sinai. It was, the Caucasus Mountains, and basically was there around the Red Sea. And God was just like, I know they're going to run up in there and they're going to start a war. And God was telling them while they were walking around the mountain, He was telling them time after time, do not attack these people, do not attack these people, do not attack these people. So when you read the book of Deuteronomy and then you start reading about the Talmud and what happened, you can easily link history together. I mean, I know this is kind of scattered brain and it's a lot of information, but I'm just trying to digest it myself. But being what I know about history, I can start linking to what happened where. And for one, the Jews came out of Mesopotamia because there was a famine in Asia. That's the original reason why they ended up in Jerusalem. So there's a lot, and I'll have more to say later. I'm trying to get everything out in 15 minutes. And once again, Golden Globe, thanks for the information on the Talmud. I'm going to look into it more, and it talks about how you have your different type of Jews. You have you have the ones with the black, that wear all the black. You know what I'm saying, and how they think they're elitist and yada yada yada. It's your boy Tone 202.